Hi, everyone. So, welcome to our presentation today on kickstarting your summer job. It's really for anyone. If you're kind of changing careers, second career, looking for something else, this can pertain to you. It's really about understanding your resume and how it pertains to employment. So, introduction about myself. I've been with GovernWise for just over 2 years. I'm the HR advisor. I've worked with First Nation Human Resources for about 20 years now, more Treaty 3 territory, but all across the board. So I'm really happy to be here. So we're going to start today with what's called a shape exercise. We want people to help better understand their personality and their work style. And then in turn, they learn and understand other people's. So we want to encourage self-reflection, what kind of jobs or tasks or environments that might best suit them. Promote and appreciate the differences of all people in the workplace, whether it's as part of your team or the organization as a whole. So our first thing is, what shape best connects to you? What one do you kind of gravitate towards? So we've got a square, a circle, a triangle, a rectangle, and then a squiggly line. My squiggly line's not very great, but bear with me. So everybody pick one that kind of matches who they like, what they gravitate towards, and keep that in your mind. And we're going to go through them. So what shape did you align with? You can write it down, you can just remember, whatever. So if you were a square is someone who's organized, detailed, analytical, they persevere, they're perfectionist, meticulous, but patient. So people that are squares are very organized and hardworking. They like structure and rules. They dislike situations in which they don't know what is expected of them. If you tell them the details and the deadlines and all the information, they'll get the job done and do it as expected. They prefer to work alone as to a team. They're more logical in how they think. They think A, B, C, D and get things done in order. They collect lots of information and data before they move forward and give a decision. They want to make sure that they've made the right decision. A circle is someone who's more a feeler, friendly, relationship-oriented, team-oriented, very reflectful, tactful. So if you're a circle person, you probably have the most empathy out of all the shapes. You've got very good connection and perception of feelings for other people. You listen and communicate really well. You read people well. You can pick out somebody if they're phony or if they're not telling the truth right away. You like harmony. Some of your greatest difficulties in the workplace or life come from challenges or conflict with people. You're easily swayed by other people's decisions and feelings. And you can be an effective manager in a workplace, but you would have difficulty with conflict. So it's about building that for yourself. A triangle. A triangle, people are more ambitious, task-oriented, work well under pressure. They want to know what and when, and they're very competitive, very decisive. So triangles are typical leaders. You're more decisive and focused on the goal. You have confidence in yourself, your opinions, your abilities. You don't hesitate to tell other people about your confidence in those abilities, and you're very assertive. You can shoot from the hip and just run with things. You like recognition and to tell people about your accomplishments. It can come across as kind of egotistical, but often it's a really big confidence. You've done the work, you understand things, and you're coming from somewhere where you've learned and you're speaking from experience. Often a triangle is a man, but that's changing in the new workforce, so it's not necessarily a man anymore. A rectangle. A rectangle is someone who is more curious, adventurous. They're searching and inquisitive. They're constantly growing. So if you're a rectangle, you're someone who's seeking and exploring, searching for other ways to grow and change. You're constantly asking something of yourself of who am I? What do I do? What do I offer? What's happening in the world? How can you contribute? So you're one of the most receptive of the five shapes. You're constantly wanting to learn something new. You're the only shape that's not frozen in the status quo. Like you constantly want to grow and move. And a squiggly line. A squiggly line is someone who's very creative, intuitive, aggressive, but in a fun, playful kind of way, idea oriented, expressive and dramatic, and very witty. So these are the people that are constantly doing new things, thinking of something new. Their mind never stops working, but they don't think like the squares do in an ABC matter. They kind of jump and flop from A to Z to M to K to they're all over the place. Um, they say that a squiggly line could see the forest and miss the trees. They don't like structured work environments. They don't like mundane or repetitive tasks. And they don't get as excited about work. They're excited about other things, unless you give them a job that is very exciting to them. So a shape is important because it helps us to really understand ourselves, but it helps us to understand other people that we work with too, which is half the battle anymore within work, right? We're working as teams, we're working collectively, and we're all different and we all bring really great things to the table. So it's really important to understand how our differences can really contribute to an organization. So shape exercise, we hope, is going to bring self-awareness. Before you write your resume, you're going to kind of understand more about yourself and what you offer. It can help you find the right words. Maybe you don't need to think of that you're creative and you're structured, and it's going to give you those trigger words first. You can really match your identity and your role, and it can help you with interview talking points. So this is kind of doing your resume in a different way. So there's a really great program called Guiding Circles, and I've used it a lot. The first booklet in Guiding Circles is about telling your story. So it's honoring you and what you've done, but not in a traditional resume format. It's about circles and about what that circle model means. So I found this really cool graphic that shows the circles and how it comes to a First Nation perspective. Everything in the circle, everything within the circle follows a cycle. So the sun, the moon, the seasons, the journey of life, birth to death, the way you walk around a circle, the respect of a circle. So the circle never ends. So I thought that that was really important because your journey through work and employment should never end. You should constantly be wanting to grow and change because as we age or as we change through seasons or through our career, we change and we need to kind of adapt and grow to that. So if we think from a circle perspective, we're all equal. No one is in front of us, behind us, above us, or below us. Yes, we've got like a hierarchy in a workplace. You've got a supervisor, a manager, but when you've got a really great organization, it's about working collectively and highlighting our skills and our abilities and really making us shine collectively as a team. So we wanted to kind of focus on what happens for recruitment, what an organization is looking for, and then how as a job seeker we have to meet it. So this presentation today is for employment to kind of an employer organization to kind of highlight that everyone's different. We all have these special skills, abilities, traits, characteristics. But then from an employee side, we want you to understand what recruitment and selection means. So when you first see a job posting, it goes in the newspaper, on a web page, whatever. Then we submit our resume and our cover letter to meet that deadline. Then an application, if that's required. Then that goes back to the organization and they screen all those candidates. An interview is conducted. Top candidates are then extended a job offer. You complete your crim check, your reference check, ensure that candidate meets all the requirements. So if there's outside kind of vulnerability sector checks, whatever, you have to do that. And then the candidate start date. So this all matters because it's part of that process, but the process is just one step in hiring. And we want to make sure that we honor the candidates that we're interviewing, but we want to make sure that they're going to be a perfect fit or align really well and become a perfect fit for that job. So for a typical resume, a resume is a tool used when applying for employment. It highlights all of about us, so gives a summary of our skills, outlines our education, lists our work history and work experience, has a list of our training and professional development that we've taken, outlines any volunteer experience that we've completed, and then shares any accomplishments, awards, anything like that that have been presented. So it should be a full capsule of who you are as a person. The purpose of a resume is to introduce yourself because it is your first introduction to that organization or employer, or you're introducing yourself as a different candidate from what you previously applied or considered employment with them. So a resume is typically 1 to 2 pages. It tells your career story, outlining your education, training, qualifications, work history. And there's typically 3 different resumes that you can have. There's a traditional reverse chronological order resume. So it goes what you've done most recent to what you've done older, previous. There's a strategic functional resume. And then there's a combination of both kind of resumes. So we're going to go into those a little bit. A reverse chronological order resume is the most popular type of resume that is used. It focuses on your most recent experience at the top, prioritizing kind of new, and everything that's current would be at the top of each section. Employers constantly are just doing a really brief, quick scan. Like they maybe spend 5 minutes on a resume application package and then they move on to the next. And so you want to really set your resume apart. So a functional resume allows job seekers to focus and highlight certain things and prioritize things from top to bottom. This is just an example of a reverse chronological resume. So you've got your name, very important to make sure that that's always updated with your contact information, because I've had lots of people that have missed an interview because their phone number was incorrect or their email address was wrong. So really important to make sure that your contact information is correct. Then we've got a job objective or a summary at the top. And you don't have to follow this exactly, but it kind of gives you a good format. Then we've got professional experience, so listing your current job, then we've got your education, and then we've got any community service or volunteer work that you've done. So this would be a 1-page resume, but as you fill in and grow that, you're going to expand it to 2. You might have 3 pages if you've got a lot of experience, but you really want to summarize things and try to keep it concise into 2. So for a functional resume, very different in format to a reverse chronological, where you prioritize your skills and your potential over what you have. So you're de-emphasizing your lack of experience or your gaps in employment. If you were off on mat leave for a year, you don't highlight your timeline for your work experience, you're going to highlight your experience itself. So if you've got finance experience, you're going to highlight that rather than when you did that finance job. So this is a great resume for somebody who is changing careers. Maybe they're going from human resources to finance and they've got some finance experience, but not a lot. This is a good opportunity to go and pull where you've gained that finance experience from your HR work and really highlight how you can implement it in this job that you're applying for. So a functional resume is less common, but it often requires more effort to create because you're really kind of tailoring it big time to each job that you're applying for and making it applicable to that organization and that role. It's a great option when the organization wants to know more about the applicant rather than their work history. So some people like to know the dates and the timelines and all the things, and they want to get a good picture of you and how long the longevity of your roles in those positions. But for somebody who's changing careers, this is a great option. So this is a picture of a functional resume. So as you can see from the highlighted parts, we've got a highlight of qualifications, so it gives you a summary there. Then it's got relevant skills, so it said you could say finance skills, working within a First Nation band office, and then you could list a bunch of skills. Then you could go and say finance experience as it relates to human resources here. And then you can list your work history with your dates. But the other stuff, the skills-based stuff, is the priority, and it's the part that's most important. You still have all the components of a regular resume, but it just changes how it looks. So then a hybrid or a combination resume, it's a blend of both styles. So you're creating something that's your own. Um, you want to really highlight what's important to you and what you want to sell. So you can take your timeline and make that really important, but then you can also take that finance experience and highlight it in a different way. So you want it to list your skills, you want it to list your timeline, you want it to really match who you are and then what you offer to that role and why you'd be a successful candidate in that position. So this is kind of an example. So you've got the highlighted parts at the top, your accomplishments of professional skills, so you can do your key skills, and then your work history and your education is more concise and smaller and at the bottom. So timeline isn't as important. You're sharing more skill case, but you've got both to kind of let an employer look at. So components of a traditional resume, you want to make sure that your contact information is there and accurate. You're going to have a career objective. You're going to have a summary of skills and qualifications. I really want you to make sure that those kind of things match the job that you're applying for. That's your opportunity to kind of link them. Your work history is going to be there. Your education is going to be there. Your volunteer experience, if you want it, is included. Professional awards, associations, etc. And then references. So whatever reference, whatever job resume that you choose, you want to make sure that you have these major components included because this is what the employer is looking for to kind of screen and to evaluate you. So traditional versus circle focus. So this is a really cool graphic that I seen years and years ago um, on kind of more what's Western, what's Indigenous, and then what kind of overlaps. So it's a cool kind of thought on formats, very linear versus very reflective. The purpose, you're going to show how you match a job posting versus how you align as a person. Your voice. So you can make it more formal for a traditional resume or more personal and more rooted in community and family from a First Nation perspective. And you want to highlight your achievements and your journey, your life, and you want it to really reflect who you are. So it's an opportunity to share that in a more Indigenous circle kind of format way. So traditional resumes show what you've done, and a circle-based resume shows more of who you are and why that matters and why it would be reflected in your role. So data collection, resume data in a circle format. So this is from Guiding Circles again. So it kind of looks at your resume and it puts it in a circle way. So what's the career goal? So you would put what career you're applying for, what you're trying to achieve. It could be current, it could be short term, long term, it could be for future. The middle ring is the self-reflection on each of the topics. So the middle ring would be what you think of your work-life roles. So if you're a mother, if you're a human resources advisor, if you're a volunteer, if you're learning, if you're taking a course, you can write it in that second circle. And then the outer circle is for other people to give you information and to reflect on you. So maybe there's things that you haven't thought of, or maybe they're compliments and it's really praising you for work you've done that you haven't considered putting on a resume before. So it's a nice opportunity to get somebody else to reflect and make you kind of think bigger and be proud about your own work. So just to go over those, what the circle things were. So we've got your work life roles. So what jobs you've held in your current life with family, community, your actual employment, work connections. So people of the world and who you've connected with, what connections that you've made that could assist you in your career. Um, so thinking of bosses, colleagues, people that you've worked with along the way. Learning what you've learned throughout your life, school, work, traditional, cultural. You want to include that stuff because you might get a First Nation employment opportunity and they want you to speak the language and maybe you wouldn't have included that on a traditional resume. So that's really important. Balance, you want to maintain a balance, spiritual, emotional, mental, physical. So maybe you're really good at connecting to the land and you're out but maybe you wouldn't have thought of that otherwise, but maybe someone in your family or your work colleagues would have. Value what are your beliefs and how are you feeling, what guides you, money, success, serving others, culture. Personal style and spirit, what words describe your personal style and spirit? How would you go about accomplishing things? So if you're enthusiastic, patient, energetic, empathetic. So it really kind of makes you think differently about what a resume could mean. And it has you ask other people then too and get their input and their support on what you think your accomplishments or your values are. So connections to guiding circles. So we've got otherwise known as a network. So most people think of a work network as anyone that you've um, given you that you have in your bank of people. So it could be old colleagues, it could be a boss, it could be a teacher, it could be a guidance counselor, it could be a chief, it could be leadership in your own community. These are really your guiding circle connections, and they're all part of your network. So it could be family, it could be anything spiritual, it could be ceremony stuff. You really want to think of who you have in your circle and how you can help get you the job that you're really looking for and want to secure. So this just breaks it down a little bit. You've got yourself, what gives you meaning and strength, your family, community, interactions and engage with your First Nation and community or town. So you want to really think of your connections go bigger than just yourself and your family. They can go to spiritual stuff, they can go to cultural stuff, they can go to your community, they can go to extracurriculars. You've got a big connection and you've just really got to dig in and find out who and where you can utilize those best. So telling your story for guiding circles, we want you to detail everything that's important to you in your life that can be difficult and challenging when put on the spot or under pressure. So it's kind of just an opportunity to go and think and prepare. Break down your story into the following components and then let's fill in the parts and make your story unique. So this is your opportunity to go and say, nothing's more important or less important than anything else. These are all part of who you are and your story. So again, we've got what are your hobbies? What are your accomplishments? What are your responsibilities? What sports are you participating in or have? Jobs that you've held in your life. That can be from mother to HR advisor to a director on a board, whatever. Learning, where have you gone to school? Where have you attended ceremony? Where have you learned things? What are your likes? What are your dislikes? And then anything else that kind of fits in there too. So instead of going and taking it from a resume and being, what is your summary of skills? What is your education? What is your training and professional development? What is your accomplishments? You really get to think of it more from what makes me me and fill in all those holes. So then transferring information, because we could make a circle resume. I've never done it, but I'd be game to try. But I think taking all that circle information and then going and flipping it into a traditional looking resume, you want to help transfer that personal information into a resume format and make new highlighted sections of your resume to kind of sell yourself. So it's transferring your story into your resume and bridging between the two worlds, I think is really important. So this is a resume that I did as an example. We've got sections listed on the left on why it's important and what's required. And then we've got kind of all the components. So I've got this actually saved as a handout. If you'd like this handout, we can send it to you. It just kind of gives a good layout for a resume. It gives the examples of why it's important. It's got your timelines and your information and stuff in it. So it's got some really good sections that you can kind of take community volunteer, training, professional development, all your things and make it your own and personalize it. And I'm here to help. If you need help with the resume, by all means, let me know and I can help you with that. And then we included the cover letter. We really didn't talk about cover letters much. We talked about more the resume and the application process for employment. But this is just a generic cover letter example. On the left, again, it's got in boxes on why things are important. And then we've got your base of your letter on in the body of the letter. And I can help with that too. So for employment application tips and tricks, not always does an organization have an application form, but an application can mean your resume, your cover letter, and your application package for applying for employment. So it's really important to always proofread, even get a second set of eyes to go over it for you and look and review and proofread for you. Really important to follow your application instructions. So make sure that you're including everything that you need to include. If they're asking for a crim check, if they're asking for a license, if they're asking for whatever, you want to include that and have it available to them and let them know that you have it. If you don't let someone know that you have those things that they're asking for, you might get screened out and not get the opportunity to meet with them in person and sell yourself. So that's important. And then you want to ensure that you're meeting the deadline. I've had a lot of times when people have missed a deadline by a little bit, and sometimes there's a little bit of flexibility, sometimes not. So you want to make sure that you're meeting all those requirements as they're outlined. So mapping out a job search pathway. So finding employment now can be really challenging and difficult. There's tons of employment opportunities out there, but by difficult, I mean finding something that aligns with you. You don't need to just go and get a job anywhere because you need a job. You want something that you're going to connect with and really resonate to. So you want to kind of think of what organizations you've heard good things about or who you've been around that offer a work environment that you want and that you want in your life. So finding those organizations and checking to see what's available and what's upcoming, having your connection to kind of share that and say, oh, Dana's looking for employment. Let me know if you have anything. Those are great opportunities, but you want to tell your story. You want to discover your interests and your strengths. You want to explore and research the opportunities that are out there, connect to those opportunities. So if you know that something's coming up in your community and you're going to see the chief next week, you can tell them that you're interested or that you've seen this was coming up, and just kind of put your name out there and let people know that you're looking. Those are your connections to those opportunities. And then you want to reflect and adjust. So maybe applying for that job you had an interview, it wasn't what you thought. Maybe it's not the organization that you think, maybe it's not the fit that you thought it was. You might not want to apply there. You might want to consider other places of employment. So it's really about finding that good match for what aligns with you. And here we go, align and fit. So we want to ensure that career decisions are personal, purposeful, and rooted in your identity, not just based on what's available. So yes, we all see the job listings and we've got 20 jobs in the paper right now or in the newsletter for the community. That doesn't mean that they're all a good fit for you and that you should apply for all of them. And some people do that. I've supported communities before where people have gone and applied for all 15 jobs that are available because they're searching for employment and they want to gain employment and be employed and have income. But it's not always the best. If you're under evaluated within the organization, that's not good. If the job is over evaluated and shooting for the stars, that's not good. So you really, although you're looking for employment, you want to really highlight your strengths, your interests. You want to look at, does the organization, vision, mission, values, culture, does it align with you? You want to apply to things with purpose. So you want to make sure that they are the good fit and then reflect and revisit. Maybe they've got different executive director now. Maybe they've incorporated a lot of culture. Maybe they've changed their whole model and of the organization. So maybe they weren't a good fit before, but maybe they are now. So you always want to revisit. So takeaways that I find for traditional versus circle model, a traditional resume and recruiting format follows more filling a role quickly, matching keywords in a resume. And with AI now, employers aren't necessarily reading every resume. Sometimes they go through a screening tool like AI and they have words that align and they pull resumes based on what your resume said rather than who you are as a person. checking qualifications and experience boxes. You don't just have to say, I've worked in this for 5 years. I've been an admin assistant for 10 years. That we that's a traditional kind of format for what people are looking for. But the guiding circle model focuses on understanding who you are as a client or individual, honoring your story, your value, and your purpose, finding roles that align with you and connect and meet your passions and your interests, and then building confidence and clarity and letting you grow in a role. So it's a very different kind of way of looking at employment. Um, we want everyone to realize their value and that we're all different, and we want different people in our organization because that's what brings our culture and our character. And so it's really important to look at all aspects. So I'm really grateful for the time here with you today. If anybody needs help with a resume or they need help with the job postings from an employer perspective and you're looking for assistance, I'm happy to assist and I'm here for you. Please let me know.